Okay, hey guys, welcome to Biomolecules, the building blocks of life, Miss Simon's Biology 2021. So let's go ahead and get into it. But actually, before we get into the lesson, I want to review some things that I noticed that were misconceptions. So we should all know that a prokaryote is any of the organisms that lack a nucleus. So they're just simple organisms, they're small. It's going to be bacteria and archaea. Those are prokaryotic organisms, okay? So where is the DNA found in a prokaryotic cell? Well, this is what a prokaryotic cell looks like, right? This is a bacteria. This is its chromosomes, which you know chromosomes are DNA. So therefore, do you see a nucleus surrounding it? No, okay? So they have DNA. They do have DNA because DNA directs all cellular activities. Cells can't do anything unless they read DNA that tells them what to do. Okay, so for those of you guys who said there's no DNA, well, there is DNA in a prokaryotic cell. It contained and protected in the mitochondria. We haven't even talked about mitochondria, so no. And then contained and protected in the nucleus. They don't have a nucleus. So how can it be contained and protected in a nucleus if they don't have a nucleus? So no. Okay, so their DNA is free floating in their cytoplasm, which just means that cellular jelly, all this gray stuff right here, that is cytoplasm. Okay, another question that I noticed was a little bit misconstrued was the simplicity of prokaryotes prevents them from growing and reproducing. Bacteria can grow and reproduce. That's a characteristic of life. All living things must grow. All living things must reproduce. Responding to their environment, they have, how do I describe this? So prokaryotes can respond to their environment. Bacteria can swim towards, if you put a food source for them over here and you have some bacteria over here on a petri dish, the bacteria will swim towards the food source and get the food. I don't think I explicitly talked about that, so maybe that's why there was some confusion. But also, again, that's another characteristic of life. All living things must respond to their environment in some way. Okay, forming specialized tissues and organs. Bacteria don't have organs. They have organelles, but they do not have organs. Okay, you and I, we have specialized tissues and organs such as our brains, our spinal cords, our muscles, our skin, all of that are specialized tissues. We had a whole, 3 weeks on body systems, okay? And then moving through their environment, they have a little tail, okay? It's called flagella, and they use that to move through their environment. So just some things that I realized I maybe I wasn't clear on. And yes, if you see this video and you want to go and fix the mistakes on your old virtual worksheet, you can go and do that right now. Totally fine. You can get those points back. I'm here for your learning, not about your grade, okay? So lesson objective. So today, students should be able to identify and differentiate between the functions of the different types of biomolecules. Students will be able to describe functions of specialized protein, including enzymes. Again, if you guys, if I'm going too fast, which sometimes I know that I can, just press the little gear tool. Press it and go to 0.5 speed. You can make me talk half as fast as I'm talking right now, okay? So biomolecules. So again, biology is a big vocab class. This is all vocab. So let's go ahead and look at this vocabulary word and break it down together. So bio, what does that mean? And what does molecule mean? Well, we already know bio means life, right? Biology, biotic factors. We've talked about that so many times. I'm not even going to go over it. Molecule, what does that mean? So let's talk about what a molecule is. So hopefully we all know what an element is. So an element is going to be a type of atom. So something that's on the periodic table. So for example, carbon. Other elements include helium, oxygen, nitrogen. Molecules are just going to be multiple atoms that stick together. So for example, water is H2O. That's a hydrogen, and an oxygen bonded together. That is a molecule. Okay, another example of a molecule could be glucose, C6H12O6. A bunch of those carbons, oxygens, and hydrogens are bonded together. They're stuck together, they're a molecule. Okay, so that's what a molecule is. It just means multiple atoms that are stuck together. So bio means life, and molecule means group of atoms. Then what does biomolecule mean as one word? Well, biomolecule is going to be a group of atoms that give life, that are used in life. Okay, there's a specific atom, a specific element in general that we are very, very impressed with as humans, as all things that live. This thing is called carbon. So carbon atoms can actually be joined together to form what are called carbon molecules. So for example, glucose, like I said, C6H12O6. Glucose is an example of a carbon molecule. Another one that I'm breathing out right now as I speak, I'm breathing out carbon dioxide. Okay, that's carbon. That's a carbon atom stuck together with two oxygen atoms. This whole thing together is called a carbon molecule. Okay, so carbon is essential for life. Carbon molecules are essential for life. So let's go back to biomolecules. So biomolecules are produced by living organisms. So there's two types, there's micro and macro. And today we're really going to focus on macromolecules, specifically on all of the macromolecules that we're going to talk about all have to do with carbon. Carbon is the essential element for life, if you do not believe it. A lot of people, a lot of students, and really is a lot of people in general, because, you know, you carry ideas from school out into the real world. Yeah. So carbon is actually the essential element. A lot of people think it's oxygen because we breathe in oxygen, but carbon is really the essential element that is used to determine if life can exist. Because there are organisms, we'll learn about those that are anaerobic. So if they're anaerobic, that means they're away from oxygen and they live that way. Actually, there are organisms that are poisoned if they're exposed to oxygen. So oxygen is not essential for life. Carbon is essential for life. Okay, so whenever they go up onto Mars and whatnot, and they were looking for different things, they're looking for water and they're looking for carbon. If there's sources of carbon, then we believe that life can exist. Okay, anyways, enough about aliens. Let's get back to the unit, to get back to the lesson. So we're talking about biomolecules, but more specifically, we're talking about the biological macromolecules. So what does this term macromolecules actually mean? Well, you know, micro, as in like microscope, right? We know that that means tiny, right? So if something is micro, it's tiny. If you're called a micro influencer, you are a tiny influencer. Okay. How about macro? M-A-cro. So if micro means tiny, what do you think macro means? Macro means big. Exactly. So again, micro, we already know that. You know, microscope, tiny. Macro means big. Okay, so we're talking about macromolecules. We're talking about very large groups of atoms, so very large molecules. So we're talking about we're going to talk about 4 of them today. So another thing, macromolecule, polymer, biomolecule can all be used interchangeably. So if you see the term biomolecule, if you see the term macromolecule, if you see the term polymer, they're pretty much going to mean the same thing. Okay? It's not making sense right now, but just bear with me. Stay with me, okay? So, we have monomers and polymers. So, these 2 words are very, very similar, except they have different first 4 letters. So, as with all words in biology, we're going to break down the word and then we'll easily find out what it means. So, mono, M-O-N-O, that means one piece of the molecule. So, one small piece of the molecule. So, a monomer is a small piece of the molecule. And the easy way to remember that is that you already know what mono means, right? If you ever heard about monolingual as opposed to being bilingual. Being bilingual means you speak 2 languages. So, maybe English and Spanish or English and Russian. And monochromatic means one color, right? Something that's monochromatic. If you have like a monochromatic fit, that means that you're wearing all the same color. And then monogamy means that you have one partner. You're monogamous, right? That's different from poly. Poly means that there are many repeating pieces of a molecule. So polygamy means many partners. Polytheism is a belief in many gods, such as like the Greek gods. Polygon is many sides, is a shape that has many sides. Okay, so again, mono means one, poly means many. So if I'm asking you about a monomer, that's going to be one piece. And if I ask you about the polymer, that's going to be multiple pieces. Okay. this is what this could look like. This is a representation using little Lego pieces. So the monomers are going to be each individual block is a monomer, right? Because it's one piece. But if I put those three things together and I connect them, then suddenly I have a polymer, right? Because it's many pieces that are all connected together. Okay, this is 1, 2, 3. Now I have a polymer that's made up of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of 5 monomers. Okay, so polymer means many of them stuck together, while the monomers are going to be one piece. Okay, another way that we can think about this is that if we look at the polymer and I ask you, what is the monomer of this? Well, as you can see, there's many repeating pieces that are the same thing, so I know a monomer is going to be one of those Lego pieces. This right here is a monomer. This here is another monomer, another one, and another one. But if I'm referring to them as a group, they're going to be the polymer. Okay. We're going to look at some more representations of this. So inside of a cell, there can be these free-floating pieces, right? They're all one piece. This is one piece. This is one piece. They're not connected at all, so they're known as monomers. However, there's this process that's called polymerization, polymerization. So we know what a polymer is. That's going to be many pieces, and then ization just means what, like process. So it's just like the process of making it into many pieces. So a polymer is going to be all of those monomers connected. And you get another representation. So this long chain is known as a polymer because it's many repeating pieces, but each individual thing is a monomer. Okay, again, we have a polymer. However, would I say each individual thing is a monomer? No. Okay, listen up. Since this is, it does green, pink, blue, green, pink, blue, green, pink, blue, green, pink, blue. There's a pattern, right? So there's this pattern repeats many times over. One whole monomer is going to be here. This is another whole monomer. This is another whole monomer. And this is another whole monomer. Okay, it would be incorrect if I asked you to circle the monomer and you only circled this blue thing, you would get it wrong. It has to be all three pieces because all three pieces repeat in the exact same order. They repeat in the exact same order. Okay, so this is going to help you out getting this concept in your brain right now. It's going to help you out once we get to DNA, because you'll notice or you'll learn that a nucleotide, which is a monomer of the DNA molecule, it has 3 pieces to it. And you have to make sure that you know that all 3 pieces are a monomer together. Okay? So pretend that this right here, ABC, 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 pretend that this is a polymer. Identify the monomer for me. What is the monomer here? Well, we know that a polymer is going to be a molecule made up of many repeating pieces, because poly means many. Okay? And I want you to identify the monomer. And again, the monomer is the small singular piece that keeps on repeating. So this is a polymer. What is the monomer? ABC. Okay? The entire molecule, again, is the polymer. How did I know that? The problem told me it. ABC repeats over and over and over and over again, which tells me that A, B, and C is the monomer. It would be incorrect to just say A. It would be incorrect to just say AB. It would be incorrect to say ABCA. Okay? The only correct answer here, the only piece that repeats over and over and over again in a chain is ABC. 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 Okay? So the monomer is the pieces that keep repeating. It could be one piece long, could be a monomer. There even could be a monomer that's 2,000 pieces long. If it's 2,000 pieces and it repeats, the next 2,000 is the same, and the next 2,000 is the same, then that is the monomer. Okay, whatever is the repeating piece is the monomer. Okay, so enough of that. kind of get into the macromolecules themselves. So we have 4 macromolecules, aka biomolecules, aka our polymers. We have carbohydrates, we have lipids, we have nucleic acids, and we have proteins. We've already talked about most of these, and you also probably know about these, but let's get into it anyways. So by the end of this lesson, you should know, first of all, these 4 names, they should be in your head. You should also know their functions and main examples. Okay, but we're going to go through them individually right now. So carbohydrates, aka carbs, they have 2 main functions. 1, they're an energy source, and 2, they're there for structural support. So carbohydrates are used whenever an organism needs energy between meals or during physical activity. The reason why carbohydrates are used then is because they can be quickly broken down. So these are going to be the quick energy source. Okay, we're going to learn about something that's a long-term energy source. So know that carbohydrates are the quick energy source. Okay, structural support. So we have structural support. Cellulose is a type of carbohydrate that is found in the plant cell walls, while chitin is a carbohydrate that is found in the cell walls of fungi. Okay, this is very important. If let's say you see a problem and it tells you that there's a presence of cellulose in the cell wall, then you automatically know that organism is a plant. If you see a problem and it says that they've detected the presence of chitin in their cell wall, then you should know that chitin tells us that it is a fungal cell. Okay, make sure that you find some way of remembering this, either by looking at my chart, taking your own notes, whatever you need to do. Okay, so again, the macromolecules, carbohydrates, it's monomer, they're going to be monosaccharide. So again, if you see monosaccharide in a problem, that tells you carbohydrates. Sugars and starches, carbohydrates. If you need energy storage or energy is needed quickly in a short term, carbohydrates. Or if we're talking about structural supports like cellulose and chitin, carbohydrates. Carbohydrates. Okay. Examples of carbohydrates are going to be simple sugars and complex starches. Lipids. So lipids, whenever you think of lipids, always think of a picture like this because they're going to be your oils. They're going to be waxes and butters. Okay, lipid functions are going to be hormones, specifically steroid hormones. We're going to learn about another type of hormone in a little bit. Energy, they're used for long-term storage. Remember, I just said carbohydrates are used for short-term energy storage. They're used quickly, while lipids are used for long-term energy storage. And that makes sense. Fats have a lot of energy. Fats are on your body for a long time, right? Lipids are used for long-term storage of energy. Okay, lipids also are used to waterproof certain surfaces. So oil and water, we already know they don't mix. Like that's why whenever you're trying to wash a greasy and oily pot, you're gonna have to use some detergent. You have to use some soap. You can't just use water to clean that because oil and water don't mix. Okay. So lipids allow plants and animals and fruits to conserve water. And of course, we already know lipids are fats, and fats are insulating. They give us cushion and they keep us warm. Okay, so lipids monomers are going to be fatty acids or sometimes glycerol. Their polymer are going to be triglycerides. So glyc, notice that glyc, that should tell you lipids. Okay, again, they're used for long-term energy storage, and that makes sense because fats are on your body for a long time. It stores a lot of energy in them. And then the cell membrane, we'll talk about phospholipids on the next slide. So examples of lipids, again, oils, butters, waxes, that's the main thing that you should think of. Also steroid hormones, such as cholesterol. And the infamous phospholipids, which are the main component of the cell membrane. And remember that all cells have cell membranes. Not all cells have cell walls. Not all cells have membrane-bound organelles. But all cells have a cell membrane that basically acts as a bodyguard for the cell. And let's talk about that. So the cell membrane and the phospholipid bilayer, same thing. Same thing. Phospholipid bilayer, cell membrane, same thing. So this is a diagram that I made of a cell. So let's say this is a cell. This is its membrane. I made it thick just so that you can just for demonstration purposes. Okay, this is outside the cell and inside the cell. So of course, if some sort of chemical or something wants to get into the cell, it's going to have to go through this membrane, right? And then get inside the cell. However, the cell membrane doesn't just let anybody in, right? It doesn't let anybody in, because if anything can get into the cell, then that would be very bad. Any toxins could just get into the cell very easily. So think of the cell membrane as like a bouncer. So you guys know what a bouncer is? A bouncer is like the guy with the glasses that stands outside the club, and they're like, no, you can't come into the club, or you can't come into the party, right? I'm sure you've all seen it on movies and stuff. So the cell membrane is the bouncer, so it's going to tell some things, yeah, you can come on in. And other things are like, nah, you got to leave. So that term, selectively permeable, just means that it selects what is permitted to enter. So to get into the cell, like I said, things are outside of, like molecules that are outside of the cell that want to get inside the cell, have to go through this phospholipid bilayer. But the phospholipids are made up of these two components. They have their hydrophilic head and hydrophilic. So hydro means water. Philic means love or attracted to. So hydrophilic means attracted to water. While their hydrophobic tail is hydro, water, phobic, scared of. They're scared of water. Okay, so that's how it creates this selective permeability. We're going to have a whole 2 weeks on the cell membrane, but I just kind of want to introduce this lesson so that once we get there, you guys already have an idea in your mind. Okay, so this is a selectively permeable membrane made up of phospholipids. Okay, this is a phospholipid. And I mean, the name phospholipid bilayer makes sense because, again, this is a phospholipid. This is a phospholipid. There's two of them. They're in a layer. It's the phospholipid bilayer. Okay, so nucleic acids. So nucleic acids have this, nucleic acids, their function, we already know this, is their genetic material, so DNA and RNA. So when genes are actually read, proteins are made. So we're going to get to proteins in a second. And those proteins are going to give us our characteristics, such as brown hair. So my DNA, the genes, my DNA, my genetic code, my genome, my DNA, is going to code for, it's going to get read by the cell, and that's going to pump out a protein. That protein is going to do something, and that's going to make your hair be this color. It's going to make your hair, or it's going to make you 6 feet tall, or whatever. It's going to give you your traits. Okay, so that's actually how it does. And this process is called protein synthesis, aka central dogma. And that's actually the very first topic that we'll talk about when we get back to school in January. So we'll talk about protein synthesis for about 2 weeks when we get back in January. And DNA is like a recipe. So it tells your cells how to make you. So like how a recipe tells someone how to bake cookies, genes tells the cell how to make proteins. So genes, nucleic acids are like recipes. Okay. One thing to note is that you're going to practice this comparison skill on your exit ticket. So you're going to compare, I think, lipids and something else. Okay. So nucleic acids is the macromolecule. Their monomer is the nucleotide. We'll talk about those when we talk about DNA. And of course, their polymer is the molecule of DNA. Their function is to store genetic information, which codes for proteins. And again, their examples are DNA and RNA. Yeah. So the only difference between DNA and RNA is that DNA is double-stranded. RNA is single-stranded. So is it still single? No, it's like always. Humor. Like I said, we're going to get to the infamous protein. So proteins basically do so much in your body. I feel like something that I didn't understand when I was a freshman taking biology. I was like, I don't get it. How are they doing all this? And now that I've graduated with a degree in biology and taught biology, I understand it. So let me try and explain it to you, so you guys don't be like me and don't know what you're talking about. So proteins have many functions in the body. So essentially, you can sum up a protein's function as cellular processes. You can just say they They do things in the cell. No, if you tell me that, I will mark you wrong. So they do processes in the cell. So enzymes are a type of protein, and their job is to just speed up a chemical reactions. In middle school science, you definitely have heard of a catalyst. A catalyst just means speed up a chemical reaction by lowering its activation energy. Proteins, there are some proteins that are structural molecules. So such as your muscles, there's two things called actin and myosin. They do that, they claw, and that's how your muscles contract and move. Tendons, bones, hair, skin, collagen, all of that are proteins. Proteins can also be hormones, so non-steroidal hormones are also known as peptide hormones. And the infamous antibodies. Antibodies are actually proteins. Okay, they're a class of proteins, and as we know, antibodies are going to be your immune system soldiers. They're going to defend from invaders. They're going to protect you from being sick and whatnot. So they actually are proteins. So again, insulin. So that thing that diabetics have too little of in most cases is a type of protein. It's a hormone, a protein hormone. Again, antibodies are proteins. Hemoglobin, which transports oxygen in your blood, is a protein. Enzymes that speed up reactions are proteins. There are some proteins that are used for storage, so storage of iron. Okay, when spiders make their webs and their webs are super duper strong, they actually are using a protein in their spider silk. There are actually proteins that are receptors on the cell that allow cells to communicate with each other. And then, of course, I told you your muscles proteins are used in your muscles. So yeah, proteins do it all. This is basically what I'm trying to say. Proteins have so many jobs inside of their body, they do it all. And I added this little cartoon, but I'm going to keep going. Okay, so again, proteins, their monomer is going to be amino acids. So again, like I said, in January, we're going to talk about amino acids and protein synthesis and transcription, translation, all of that. But for now, you just need to know that protein's monomer is the amino acid. So if you see the term amino acid, that has to do with proteins. If you see the term polypeptide, that literally just means poly. Remember, that means many. Peptide, you'll learn, is the bond between amino acids. So polypeptide is just protein. Okay, their functions are to do cellular processes, so they might speed up reactions, such as an enzyme. They might transport substances, such as protein channels in the cell membrane. They could do structural support, such as the spider silk, or they could even make hormones, such as insulin. So yeah, examples of proteins. Enzymes, again, are going to catalyze, which just means to speed up chemical reactions in the body, and animal products, such as meats, dairy, and milk, are going to be, yeah. There's also, of course, beans and soy milk and stuff like that, nut butters that are also plant sources of protein. Okay, this is our last topic, I promise. Enzymes. So enzymes look like this. They have what's called an active site. They match up with the substrate and they do a certain thing. Okay, so enzymes just speed up chemical reactions. And how do they do that? They're actually going to lower the activation energy. And what is activation energy? Well, it's kind of what it sounds like. Energy that is needed to activate the chemical reaction. Energy that is needed to activate to start the chemical reaction. Okay, so enzymes actually work by lowering that activation energy so the reaction can go ahead and start. Okay, this allows our body to keep running at a high level. Okay, enzymes are specific, so they fit together like a lock and key with whatever substrate that they work on. And that's very important because, I mean, there are, like we just saw in that one little graph that we saw of the different proteins, that's only 1% of the proteins in your body. So enzymes have to be very, very specific, so they only work with certain things. They fit together like a lock and a key. Okay, so again, enzymes are specific, means they will work with specific chemicals only. Then that matching enzyme substrate pair are going to fit together like a key inside of a lock. So the enzyme speeds up the chemical reaction. That is the actual protein that is speeding up the chemical reaction. That is actually lowering the activation energy. Then we have the substrate. The substrate is actually going to undergo a chemical reaction once it matches up with the proper enzyme. And then the active site is what it sounds like. It's where the lock fits into the key. It's the active site. It's the site where things are actively happening. It's where they match up. Love it. Okay. There's this term called enzyme denaturation. Okay, so denaturation kind of sounds like what it says is what it sounds like. So basically, whenever these enzyme proteins are exposed to the wrong pH, so the wrong acid balance, or even at very high temperatures, enzymes can get what's called denatured, which just means that they're unfolding, so they no longer are folded in the right way. And if they are no longer folded in the right way, it can no longer fit together with its substrate like a lock and a key, right? Like if you have your house key and it gets cut off by a saw, can you still put your key into the lock? No. If it's not in the perfect way that it's supposed to be, it's not going to fit together anymore, which means you can no longer open up that door. Same thing here. If that enzyme gets denatured by too high of a pH or too high of a temperature, then they no longer, the chemical reaction can no longer happen. And that can be bad because a lot of those chemical reactions that enzymes participate in are essential for life. Right? Because enzymes are extremely, extremely, extremely important. Oh my God, they're so important. They do, again, like I said, proteins do basically everything in the body. Not everything in the body, everything in the cell. So in the human body, we have digestive enzymes, such as lactase. That breaks down lactose, which is in dairy products, such as milk or yogurt or ice cream. We have amylase, which breaks down sugars, so we actually can use them. We have metabolic enzymes, such as ATP synthase. ATP is the powering of, ATP is the energy source. So we have to eat food, and food is broken down through these processes called cellular respiration, and then it ends up making ATP. Cell signaling enzymes. And one thing to know is that if you see a word that ends in ase, so for example, lactase, amylase, ATP synthase, then it's going to be an enzyme. Okay, so our lesson summary, biomolecules, we talked about monomers and polymers, we talked about the 4 biomolecules, and we also talked about enzymes. So just to recap, macromolecules are very large groups of atoms. Means the same thing as polymer, means the same thing as biomolecule. Okay, monomers are going to be one piece of the puzzle, and polymers are going to be many repeating pieces. Okay, so the monomer is the entire thing that's going to repeat. Okay, these are our 4 macromolecules: carbs, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. These are their monomers. These are their polymers. These are their functions and their examples. Okay, and of course we have enzymes that are going to speed up chemical reactions in the body by lowering activation energy. Once they lower the activation energy, then that substrate can be turned into its product, and that product can go and do whatever it needs to do in the cell to keep us alive. All right, that was a lot. I tried to speed it up towards the end because I was rambling. All right, have a good day.